Hello guys, how are we doing? I have said that we would get some videos going and it's been a bit of a odyssey, I'll be honest. But we are here, I'm here, and yeah, I'm going to do the whole year. We're going to do it in three parts. Each part will be broken up into different sections to make it digestible. It's going to be a bit of a mixture of just a sort of general telling of the story, which again you already know because you've done the reading, but I just want to give in some extra details for you. And also answering some questions for each section. There will be more questions for you as well. But anyway, let's dive straight in so you do not have to waste time listening to me introducing. So yeah, part 1, 1917, January to March. You've already done this, we're going to go over it. What makes February 1917 and the revolution then any different to what came before it? So the books I'm using Revolutionary Russia by Feiges, as you know, we've used that quite a lot. I've used Robert Service's biography on Lenin. This is for all of everything, and I've used October by China Mieville, which is an incredible retelling of the year, which I read last week, and yeah, adds a lot of colour to this year, which I'm hoping to be able to sort of get across to you. Alright, well let's dive in then. So section A, I'm just going to go up in this video up to basically the complete breakdown of order in Petrograd. How did they get there? What was the process? So, important to remember, everyone picks up on International Women's Day, which we're going to see in a second, but actually there had been a sort of groundswell and a movement of striking before that, on the 9th of January, which was the commemoration for Bloody Sunday, which again, even in itself, shows the sort of popular consciousness of in the popular consciousness of what Bloody Sunday was and meant to people. And there were 150,000 people that turned out in Petrograd that day for the Bloody Sunday commemoration. And apparently on that day, soldiers were actually waving their sort of red flags in honour of it. Mieville notes that if people were keeping a sort of really close eye on it, they might have started to see that soldiers were starting to move onto the side of against the Tsar. But again, nobody at that point could have known that a month later there would have been or what happened. So why have I put here 9th of January and onwards? Well, from that day on the 9th of January, there were continuous strikes of different, obviously, levels and forms. 100,000 workers from 60 different factories which had all closed due to the war, due to the lack of capital and etc. 100,000 workers in the streets, all the way up to the 14th of February. They're demanding the usual things. They're demanding higher wages. They're demanding an 8-hour work day. They want the war to end because it's crippling the empire. And some of them are starting to call for the downfall of the Tsar. Importantly, on the 21st of February, which is getting closer to really when the February Revolution starts to get some pace to it, the Putilov factory, half of them are sacked when they demand a 50% wage increase to try to catch up with the soaring prices that are happening at this time because of the inability of the government or the Tsar to get food to Petrograd. In response to this, the bosses of the Putilov factory, they organise a lockout, which means everybody is forced out onto the streets, so they can't earn, as a sort of sense of punishment. This is really important because 2 days later, 30,000. The lockout's on the 22nd. So the day after this lockout, you have 30,000 really angry workers, even alone from that factory, join what is already a pretty strong protest by over 90,000 women on International Women's Day. These women are striking. They've been having to endure horrendous conditions, waiting 14 hours or more through the evening to try and get bread in the morning, and then being told that they can't get any. They are really the sort of spark here, and obviously this day holds significance because it already for many people at that time as a sort of event on the socialist calendar. So the women have played a crucial role, but just to keep some wider context as well, as I've already mentioned, the transport system, the railways are not developed enough, even due to the advances under Count Witte to get food to the city. So people are starting to get angry in that regard. A rationing has been announced, so an admission from the government that there isn't enough food. As we've already seen, factories are closed. The causes of this, seem quite self-evident afterwards. But another important issue here in terms of how this developed is the role of queuing. So obviously, literally just sounds kind of incredibly simple, but if you're standing in a queue with lots of different types of people, as I've said here, Petrograd's a cosmopolitan city. It's full of not just obviously Russians, but Finns, Poles, people from all over the empire, Jewish people. So you've got lots of different types of people, all from different classes even as well. All spreading ideas through these queues, all grumbling, all talking, all hearing what's going on. Very important. So before we move on, let's just keep it in context. Why was Petrograd so suited to the revolution? So, fine, Petrograd's only a small, in terms of the overall population, a very small amount of the overall people in Russia at that time, or the Russian Empire at that time. But tellingly, of its 2.7 million people, 400,000 were factory workers, a third of them women. 300,000 of them were soldiers, and 30,000 of them were sailors and soldiers that were at the Kronstadt naval base, which we'll come to later. But, it can't be kind of downplayed, especially with the soldiers here, how that many people that are armed, what role they can play. And also tellingly, these sections of society, these are the workers, the soldiers, they are the people that go on to the Bolsheviks' target and win over. So important to remember the populations here, and also the way it was so sociologically divided. Petrograd, you have Vyborg, very militant district. You can see the arsenal here, so that's where the guns are made. That's where the first machine gun regiment, which again you'll see later has a very important role, is based. But kind of like the way London's set up, in the middle here, around, you've got the Okhrana headquarters, you've got the telephone office, you've got the Winter Palace. This is kind of like Westminster. So, the strikes are happening, I believe, on this road here, which is called the Nevsky Prospect. You've got the River Neva here. And, this is what goes on to be the Bolshevik official headquarters. But most people live in the outer district, so for people to get in, as we're going to see, day after International Women's Day, strikes continue. We have 150,000 marching again now, but people are they're armed now because they know that there might be a threat of the police against them. They also they're hungry. They want food. They might, if it comes to it, start to smash shops open. I mean, this is the situation that people found themselves in. We got to keep coming back to this feeling. It's desperation mixed with hope. And I mean, I love this. Obviously, just historically, we've got the famous hippopotamus statue of Alexander III. Commissioned by Nicholas as a sort of monument to his father, without knowing that the artist had deliberately made his father look kind of dumpy and very stolid and heavy, which is how the statue looks. And this statue is obviously swarmed around. We have people orators standing on the top, speaking out against the Tsar, speaking against the war, um, whipping up people's demands. Yeah, and so this is an important day because the Cossacks, the Tsar's kind of personal, protection unit, I guess. 2,500 mill workers have made their way across. Oh, I forgot to mention this. So yeah, it's so cold that the people literally walk across the river. They don't walk across the bridges. They walk across the river, and as a group of Vyborg mill workers, I imagine, are making their way to the Nevsky Prospect here, they come across some Cossacks, and this is very important because Chernomyevil notes that the Cossacks were given the order to sort of disperse these mill workers who were all bunched together, and they do follow the order, but they perform what is known in Scotland as a Kokani. And what this is it's a form of sort of protest against an order, a form of resistance, where you do the thing that you've been told to do, but you do it in such a way that it makes it kind of useless. So these Cossack soldiers, they do, walk up against the Vyborg mill workers, but they charge so slowly that they don't actually achieve anything. So we can start to see here that following orders, etc., is falling apart a little bit, and something different in the air. Again, I love this image, so evocative of what happened. But this is a year later. This statue, the head pulled off, statue toppled by the Bolsheviks, just to demonstrate the sort of changes that Petrograd and the Russian Empire will go through within this next year. So the day after that, it's just turned into a general strike now. So there's now almost 250,000 people, so quarter of a million people in the streets. The streets have become their own encampment. They are, banners are everywhere, flags. People have essentially sort of just made the city centre into their own space, mainly because it's so difficult to get into it. As we've said, having to come across the river. There's a famous moment where, again, a young girl gives a bouquet of roses, or a rose, to a Cossack, and he kind of graciously receives it. He doesn't, he doesn't seem to be in a mood to be. He's not aggressive in any way. Which, again, the Cossacks supposed to be the Tsar's own force. Shlapnikov, one of the leading Bolsheviks, who's still in the capital, all the leaders are exiled, remember. He doesn't even think there's going to be a revolution at this point. He considers that a pound of bread for each person would stop all of this. Maybe he would be right, but a fatal error from the Tsar on this day in the evening comes through. He hears, whilst he's out at the front, that there's unrest, and he orders his police chief Kabalov to repress the people. If he hadn't done this, again, questions that we can ask, but that proves to be another huge error from the Tsar, maybe one of the last in his reign. So the day after, this is a big turning point. This day, the second Bloody Sunday for the Russian Empire. We have two different regiments we're looking at on this day. We have the Volinsky regiment. So soldiers are drafted in, or soldiers are asked to come out from their barracks, from their garrison in Petrograd, and to, be used as a force, a threat of force, to stop this from to put the people down, to disperse them, along with the police force. An officer from the Volinsky regiment, he's got very young troops. So just again to help us keep in mind, the soldiers in Petrograd are soldiers that haven't yet gone to the war. They're either reserve soldiers, or they're conscripts, or they're young, they're recruits, they're not confident, and then they're not really willing, to follow orders. And he takes the gun off one of his officers who's refusing kind of to shoot, and kills two of his own men who, in the process of the day, have actually got onto the side of the people. And so the soldiers are starting to face a moral choice now, or just a more general choice. Do they follow join the people, and therefore really add their weight to the revolution, or do they follow their allegiance to the Tsar? Should they? He's the one, obviously, who is has been ruling. His family's been ruling for 300 years. What do they do? Do they help him survive as he did in 1905? Well, after people have heard that one of the officers has, been firing upon the people, workers flock to the Pavlovsky Regiment. So, again, I love this image here. I'm not sure if this is the Pavlovsky Regiment, but I think it does help us to see the sort of age of some of these people, and. Well, I love the colour photo. I think it really brings out helps us connect with the past. But so they find the Pavlovsky Regiment. They're shouting at them. They're shooting our mothers. They're shooting our sisters. Very evocative language, and they claim that members of the Pavlovsky Regiment are the ones that are doing that. So they say to the members of the Pavlovsky Regiment that are still in the barracks, look, you need to go out and find these people. You need to find the members of your regiment and get them back. So they're asking soldiers to use force against their own people now, which is very interesting. And so those that are left have a very, very tense meeting. They don't know what to do. They don't know whether they haven't been given the order to do this from their superior. That it's the people that have asked them, and so they do. They go out into the streets. They try to find their own members. Their sort of blood is up. It's a very intense situation, and they end up getting into a skirmish with the mounted police and are eventually turned back by Khabalov's Cossacks. And the leaders are arrested. But given the sort of revolutionary atmosphere, this only makes things worse. And then, unbelievably, Tsar Nicholas gives, just when order is needed to be, or decisions needed to be made by people that have some form of power, or at least in a position to take power, the Tsar dissolves the Duma, which is, again, just beggars belief. Right. So this next day is the big day, Red Monday. This is where it all starts to truly fall apart, and we're going to be moving up to towards the end of this video now, and then we'll be moving on to the next section of the February Revolution. But so the next day, the Volinsky Regiment, after their officer had shot upon their own men and some of their own potential families, they've had a difficult night's sleep. They wake up the next morning. They jointly refuse to go out and raise their arms again against a crowd. They kill their captain, it's not known whether the captain kills himself, but either way, he's killed. One of these soldiers recognizes or thinks he recognized one of his own mother in the crowd. These are the types of choices people had to make, and so soldiers' regiments now start to actually just bleed in to the general mass of people, these hundreds of thousands of soldiers and workers and mothers and fathers, and give them order. They bring a sense of order to the chaos. And we have, as Faiji's mentioned, people help like a kind of invisible thread linking everybody, all chanting for the same thing now. Khabalov tries to bring some authority, but there's no Tsarist authority left. Famously, the words that everybody, historians focus upon, is that the men that were supposed to be loyal to the Tsar, they melted away. So they themselves again become part of this mass crowd of what the revolution has become. There are no leaders, as we know. All of the major leaders of the socialist parties are abroad. Martov and Lenin are in Switzerland. Stalin and Kamenev, Zinoviev is with Lenin too, and Kamenev and Stalin are in Finland. Trotsky is in America at this time. They are not there, so there's no actual leaders of this group of people, and so the power is truly in the streets, and that's really important to mention here. The power is with the people that have the weapons, that have the arms, that have and the most amazing thing about this revolution is, as everyone, almost all historians agree, it's truly spontaneous. Yes, there were some various deaths, a couple of hundred people, but given the conditions, it's quite remarkable. And as Faiji's mentioned, this is a soldier's revolution. Why is it a soldier's revolution? Well, we're going to see again in the next part here, but we're going to leave this bit with, people starting to gather outside this place, the Taurida Palace, or Taurida Palace, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that's where we're going to end it for this section. Power's broken down, we've got this massive people, anarchy in the streets. What happens in order for power to be re-established?